most welcome to Historiespanerna, History Reconnaissance. And back on track, 1930s Electric Locomotive Overhaul. This time we'll go back to Sweden in the 1930s and watch in detail the complete overhaul of Swedish State Railways D-series electric locomotive. The 1930s was a decade for electrification, not only in Europe, but also in the United States, with the Pennsylvania Railroad's Northeast Corridor between New York City, Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., that by 1935 had completed one of the largest and most ambitious electrification projects in the world at that time. But that is another story, so join us for this nuts and bolts Scandinavian railroad nostalgia. And please subscribe to our channel and join us on our continuing journey in history. First, some background before we begin with the locomotive overhaul. The Swedish D-Type electric locomotive has a significant place in the history of Sweden's rail transport. These locomotives were developed during a period when Sweden was rapidly electrifying its railways to modernize and reduce reliance on steam power. In the early 20th century, Swedish railways were undergoing an important transformation. The Swedish State Railways (SJ) had begun electrifying key routes to improve efficiency and speed, particularly in the mountainous regions like Dalarna and Norrland, where steam locomotives struggled with long grades and harsh winter conditions. The D-Type was part of this modernization drive. The D-Type was initially developed in the 1920s, and the first prototype, D101, was delivered in 1925. It was designed to handle heavy freight and passenger service on the newly electrified routes. The D-Type was fitted with a BB axle arrangement, meaning 4 axles in total, 2 on each bogie, which gave it stability and efficiency for the traction it needed. The chassis, or frame, of the D-Type locomotive was a steel structure that supported the body of the locomotive, including the cab, mechanical systems and electrical equipment. The chassis was designed to handle heavy loads and provide stability, especially on uneven tracks and through difficult terrain. The body of the locomotive, mounted on the chassis, housed the electrical systems, transformers and mechanical components. The cab was located at one end of the locomotive and provided space for the driver and control systems. It was equipped with basic controls such as throttle, brakes and switches for managing the locomotive's operations. The D-Type featured two bogies, each with two axles. This is described as a BB axle arrangement, meaning each bogie had two powered axles. The wheels were solid steel and mounted on the axles, with traction motors directly connected to them. Each bogie could swivel slightly to allow the locomotive to navigate curves more easily. Since the electricity supplied by the overhead catenary was high voltage alternating current, the locomotive required a transformer to step down the voltage to a lower usable level for the traction motors, which operated on direct current. The transformer was a heavy oil-cooled device mounted inside the body of the locomotive. The control system in the cab allowed the driver to regulate the power supplied to the traction motors, adjust speed and operate the braking systems. Early D-type locomotives used a relatively simple form of resistance control, where electrical resistors were used to control the amount of current flowing to the motors. This system allowed for precise control of the locomotive's speed and power output, particularly important when hauling heavy freight or navigating difficult sections of track. In conclusion, the Swedish D-type locomotives of the 1930s were a sophisticated blend of electrical and mechanical engineering. They were designed to handle Sweden's demanding terrain and cold climate. The components worked together to provide powerful, reliable electric traction for both freight and passenger services.
That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.